Welcome to Coach's Corner, everybody. Thanks for watching the show. I'm your host, Coach Tripp, along my good friend, Coach Mark Hobley.
Peace.
Coach Hobbs, we have a special show today, Carl Madison tribute show to the one and only Coach Madison, the legend who passed away last weekend. Hearts go out to his family, Sky and Mark and the whole family.
Yes.
Quite an impact that guy has made. Second winningest high school coach in the state of Florida. And he coached a few years in Alabama. We'll talk about his 5 state titles. The first one back in 1980, who we actually had the quarterback on the show. And then he went to Pine Forest. We coached with Coach Jerry Pollard, also here on the show. Won titles, back-to-back titles, a national title in 1988. Coach Madison won 2 more titles at Jackson Academy in Alabama, where he took a 0-10 team, I think, in 1 year, won the state title, went 10-3. Dang, man. I thought Coach Douglas and our staff did a good job of tape until I look at Coach Madison's record. Let's go around the horn. Coach Jerry Pollard, right in the middle. Coach Pollard, thank you so much for joining this tribute show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Coach Keith Leonard. I call him Coach. Once a coach, always a coach. Superintendent of Escambia County Schools, the quarterback, of course, on the 1980 state title team. And he played with my teammate, Rocky Colburn at Bama. Yeah. Keith Leonard. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you, Coach Tripp. Thank you, Mark.
All right. Welcome.
Then we got good friend of both Coach Hobbs and I. He coached with him for many years. Coach Mike Bennett, state title winner at PHS in 2009, where he had an unbelievable defense. Still go down in the record books. Thanks for joining the show, Mike.
Hey, thank you for having me, guys.
All right, and then we had Clint Crockett, the author of The Chief. That's right. He played for Coach 1 year, but he had such an impact on him. Clint, a walk-on at Ole Miss, decided to write a book, and I can't wait to get a hold of it and read it. I wish I did before. Clint, thanks for joining the show.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, man. Let's start right at the top, Coach Pollard. There's so many stories we got at Coach Madison, but I love stories, and our listeners love stories too. We're gonna go right around the horn. Tell your favorite Coach Madison story, Coach Pollard.
I don't know if I could tell my favorite one, but there's just tons of stories. One probably is we were coaching in the All-American game. I don't know if it's the first or second one, and the guy, what's the guy's name, Mike, that played with it? Remember the Titans, the coach. What's his name?
Herman Boone.
Yeah,
Coach Boone.
I looked up, and Herman Boone also run the Veer offense. Coach Madison and Herman were in the parking lot fussing and arguing about who run the best offense, who run the Veer the best. And Herman did not read it. And Coach Madison was just giving him all kind of grief, because the only way you can run it is to read it, according to Coach Madison, which he was right. Yeah. But that's probably one of my favorite stories about him.
Oh my gosh, Coach Leonard, what do you remember the most about Coach Madison? What kind of story stands out for you?
I can tell you what I remember the most was winning. I'll start off with a story that was a long time ago. I think it was my junior year in high school, and we were going to go over. It's the third week of the season, and we were going to go over and play Baton Rouge Estruma, who was a Louisiana State power for many years. And we had a difficult start to the season. We weren't doing very well. I think, in fact, we were 0-2, which was not a good way to start off there with Coach Madison.
Oh, yeah.
What they had been doing for the first 2 games, they were switching the quarterbacks in and out. And I don't know, one afternoon, maybe on Tuesday evening after practice about 7:30, I finally had mustered up enough confidence to go in there and tell Coach what I thought the problem was, being a cocky little thing that I was. I said, it's because you don't let me play every play. Well, before the Struma game, he said, you're going to start. You're going to play every play. Let's see what a difference you can make. Well, first play of the game, we threw a little tight end cross pass. And, hell, we didn't throw but maybe 2 or 3 passes the entire game. And we had a boy named Cliff Cheney. Cliff's about 6'7", big old youngin' at tight end, and dropped back, threw what I thought would be a perfect pass right to Cliff, but it was about 8 yards over his head, so that'll tell you how errant it was. Free safety caught it. Coach Madison met me about the hash mark, gave me some coaching techniques, doubled me over, and I remember the question. He said, "Do you think you'll ever complete a pass to one of your teammates?" And that sort of sparked it right there. Obviously, it wasn't our demise didn't have anything to do with me getting to play every play. So he made sure I remembered that as we went on through that season. But that's one I remember pretty regularly.
Did you name your daughter after Coach Madison?
Yes, I actually I'll have to give credit to that. Our youngest daughter, her name is Madison Leonard, and my wife's the one that said, "Keith, we're going to name this one Madison after Coach Madison." I mean, he had impact on the entire student body. He and my wife loved Coach Madison. She loved Miss Grace. So absolutely, our youngest girl is Madison.
Coach Bennett, tell me a story about Coach Madison. Tell me your favorite story about Coach Madison.
And I got so many stories, unbelievable. But I have one right here. I mean, when my junior year, we were playing Leon, and so I'm in the game. We run a trap. Of course, I thought I really did something. I did spin move, and looking on film, our tackle was coming to block anyway, so I really didn't have to do that. Just sidestep and go. So anyway, I scored on the first time I carried in a varsity football game, and so we scored. And so I'm standing there by Coach Madison, and it's like now the end of the first quarter, and he said, "Damn, we scored too early." And I just looked at him like, "What do you want me to do?" So anyway, there was so many people around, and he told us all to get back. So I got back. I just got back, and I'm standing back there. We're playing the game, and it's probably like the middle of the second quarter. I hadn't been back in the game. He turns around, he walks back there where I'm at, and he looked at me and he said, "Where the hell you been?" I said, "Coach, you told me to get back." And so, I wasn't up there with him, and I learned, hey, man, I better be right beside him because he had a lot of good backs if I want to get in the game. So,
get back, just not too far back.
That's right. So, but Coach, man, what I mean, I tell you what he taught me by playing running back for him. This is no lie. He taught me play your best running back at all times because we didn't always do that. We played a bunch, Coach. I think, and me and Jerry, we talked about this some things when he was coaching with Jerry and at PHS, and but he learned, and when he got Paul Brown, I mean not Paul Brown, but the Brown kid Tate, and then there's a couple of running backs that Pine Forest had. Rodney Blunt for one, they stayed in the game. So.
Oh my gosh!
But he just had his own philosophy about what to do, man. It was, and I won't ever tell anybody it didn't work because it did. We didn't lose for 6 games in 3 years, so it wasn't all bad.
You coached with him for a while, Clint. How did you get to write a book on the Chief and an appropriate title? But tell our audience the process of writing the book and your favorite part of the book.
Yeah, I mean, I got to the point in my mid-30s or so where I just felt like I had to write something. And I thought, okay, who's the most interesting person I've ever known? And it took me about 2 seconds to realize it was Carl Madison. I was living in Tampa at the time. I called him, said, "Coach," I hadn't spoken to him. I literally, since he won the national championship at Pine Forest, I was in college. I called him then and congratulated him, but it had been, 18 years or so since then. Told him I wanted to write about him. He mentioned he was coaching about to coach the next weekend in the Native American All-Star game in Kansas. So I said, well, I'm coming. And I drove from Tampa and interviewed him there and a lot of his family members. And it just took off from there. Of course, it took me 18 years of research and interviews on and off. And I've spoken with all of these guys on the call and many other former players and coaches. But he had an impact on me, as you mentioned, in my short time playing for him. Actually, 2 years I had with him. But I think my personal story for him and what made it so interesting for me is just the complicated nature of Carl Madison. And I can give you an example in my own history. My junior year, a few games into the season, I suffered a concussion in practice and ended up in the hospital that night. And I recall watching the 82 World Series, game 1, Cardinals Brewers, and in through the door walked Coach Madison, which shocked me. And I thought, well, wow, he's actually very compassionate and caring person. And I had not seen that side of him before. So fast forward 4 weeks later, when I come back and am able to practice, first week of practice, we are running. I was a wide receiver. We're running the shuffle pass, or Utah pass, as some people call it, so where I have to come catch one. The quarterback flips it to me, and I'm basically behind the guard or the center. And I dropped the pass because the line was coming through. So keep in mind, first week back from a concussion, he immediately orders all the offensive line not to block anyone, and we run it over again 4 times with no one blocking and the entire defensive line coming to crush me. So just tells you a little bit about what you get with Coach Madison. You never knew what to expect, but there were multiple sides to him, and that's what made him so interesting to me. And
oh my gosh, he was something else, man. I know he admitted on my show he dressed up Woody McCorvey as a Coca-Cola man to go scout a team. When he fell out of the trees over in that story, he was something else, man. Dressed up. That's so funny. Coach Bennett, you and Coach Pollard were on the same staff, actually. And then 2 decades later, you started coaching against them. You never coached with Coach Madison, but you coached against them, Coach Bennett. Talk about how hard it is to coach against somebody like that. Whoops, we lost Mike. Mike lost his mic. All right, Coach Pollard, you coached against them. You coached with them. What made his team so good? Were they just tougher than everybody else?
I think it's just a discipline that he demanded. I don't, in the 80s and 90s, most of the teams around here were very well coached, and everybody worked hard because they knew if they didn't, Coach Madison was going to beat you on Friday night. Whether it didn't matter what kind of talent he had, it didn't matter about any of that. It was he thought, and he had the kids believing that he was going to outwork everybody, or we were going to outwork everybody.
Yeah.
And most of the time, we probably did. I mean,
Yep.
I look back at some of the 4 or 5 hour practices we had.
Right.
And I don't know how we went through it. I don't know how the kids did it. But
it was Coach. Coach Bryant used to say all the time, "There's no substitute for hard work." And that Coach Ronnie Douglas. That's why he's a winner, man. We went to Tate and had 3-hour practices, and I had heard other coaches say, "Oh, we get in there an hour and a half." You get in there an hour, but you want to do quality, but you got to do quantity as well to get everything in. The practices are harder. Coach Madison, did he believe, as I do, and as my George O'Leary, my old high school coach, did, that practices have to be harder than the games? Coach Pollard, do you believe in that?
Yeah, I believe it, and I think he believes it. And we most certainly practiced a lot harder than the games.
Coach Leonard, please
Yes,
talk about that 1980 state title team. How good they were. It was his first title. And who the defense? I guess you had John Langston, Rocky Colburn, leaders on your defense. Talk about some of your teammates too on that team.
Oh, yeah, I have no problem and look forward to being able to talk to you about the teammates from the 1980 team. Well, you know, from playing with Rocky, Rocky was going to always be the very best prepared he could be. We had a really tremendous defensive staff, which Coach Madison, he would tell you he was going to always make sure he had a good defensive staff because he wanted to make sure he got to do whatever he wanted to do on offense. So when you talk about defense, you had John Langston was the middle linebacker, ended up, I want to say, at North Texas State. Then you had Steve Black, who was not very big in stature, but big in heart, and one of the strongest people I've ever been around in my life. He played what we called the nose tackle. Really was an all-set nose and a 4-3 defense. Then the outside linebackers were Jace Banfield, and I saw Zane Price the other day at Coach Madison's funeral. Another young guy, Tommy, can't remember Tommy's last name right now, but Tommy Payne. He was another one of the outside linebackers. And you had Eric Hector, that was one of the defensive ends that ended up playing at
Hector was
Florida State. But where we were really solid, I'm talking about had tremendous athleticism, was in the secondary. You had Rocky Colburn at strong safety, who would literally knock your head off. You can ask Miami Columbus players about that.
He did it to me hundreds of times, Coach.
Oh yeah, he would hit you. And then you had our free safety was probably the best athlete on the entire team. His name was Paul Brown, and Paul, I believe he had, this is an incredible number, and it may still be a state record. He had 18 interceptions in a single season.
Yep.
What?
And then on offense, Coach Bennett was talking about getting the ball to your best back. Actually, reading the option was very simple for me because we had an individual by the name of Sam Brown, and he made a lot of bad reads on my part be very, very successful. And something that was a lot of people don't know about that 1980 team, you're only going to be as good as you are up front. And our offensive line for that day and time was not just really, really big, but was very athletic. We had 2 offensive tackles that could chase down any linebacker and get them cut off. And when you think about it, we were reading any time from 2 to 3 people on the defensive line. So you really only had to block downfield and backside so the slow quarterback didn't get caught from behind. I mean, they were big, they were strong. Tommy Wright, Wes Eddy, Joey Kite. Had to move Joey Kite after an injury the very first game of the season, which we lost, but probably was the best thing that could have ever happened to us. And then you had a center named Russell Ward, who's now a preacher. Russell probably weighed 185 pounds. He was the small one out of that bunch. The rest of them were around 245 to 280. I mean, they were big men. You just didn't have that back then. But, yeah, a tremendous team, not always the most talented at each position. But the key word there, and Coach Madison had a way of forming them. We were a team. I don't mean day in and day out. I mean all the time.
Yep.
You just found a way to be successful. We had some early scares early on, but once we made it out of Pensacola, it was 17-0, 54-14 or something like that against somebody out of Orange Park. Then 17-0 again against Winter Park, and then finally got them boys from down there around Miami Beach and beat them 35-7. And Coach Pollard knows exactly what I'm talking about. When Coach Madison got to the playoffs, it was Katie bar the door. His defense was going to be nails to the wall. Offense was ready to go. He had his teams prepared for those types of occasions. And when
Hobbs has a question for you, Key.
Go ahead on, Hobbs.
Hey, that championship game, the score was 7-7 at the half. And as you say, it ended up 35-7.
Correct.
I took the Miami boys in 14 points, and that was Nick Bonacone's son. That was Alonzo Highsmith. All those guys came up here, and I had a friend of mine. He said, "Hey, Tate's going to take him." And I say, "Well, these guys got some big names over there." And he says, "Well, I'll give you Miami in 14." And I said, "I'll take it." It was 7-7 at the half, and as you say, it ended up 35-7, and I was, needless to say, I lost that $5.
Hobbs, I didn't even play the fourth quarter.
It was over. Yes, you guys wore them slap out and I don't know if you heard the first part of it. We won 13 championships in 9 years, had 6 runner-ups. So that 1989 year that we didn't win, we were still pretty good around here. And I left here and went down to South Florida, and I knew right then there was a difference between the players down there, which they were really good, and the coaching up here, which was superior.
Yep. I believe that's credited to Coach Madison and what he set out and did. Yeah. And Coach Pollard was being nice. What he really wanted to say, and I'll say it, you knew if you were a coach and you were around here and you were getting to play a Coach Madison team, you better work and you better be prepared, or your team was going to get embarrassed. That was the bottom line. So I loved him. I appreciate what he did for us around here, and the bar has been set very high.
Yeah. Pine Forks had Jerry Pollard. Tate had Mr. Taylor. Frank Soros was at Niceville. Jimmy Ray Stevens was at Fort Walton. Don't forget, he wins the 1990 state championship with Fort Walton and Danny Wolfel. And you have Lionel Fayard at down at Choctaw, and you have Frank Cochran down at Mosley. This was, as Coach Pollard said, and then you have Carl Madison at Pensacola High. And at that time, this is ground zero for football in high school in the United States of America. Ground zero.
What's happened? Why has football gone down in the last 20, 30 years here? Does anybody have an explanation? I'm looking for.
I think Coach Pollard would be the one to answer that. I'm still working. He's retired, so he can tell you.
Well, Keith just said, or Hobbs, you just said it. Look at the coaches that were in this area, and not just the head coaches, but you look at the staffs.
Yes, coaches.
Mike Benson's, the
assistant coaches.
At that time, Mike Bennett was assistant coach. You had great staffs at every school. Look at Dwight Thomas. Nobody's mentioned him. He had Jimmy Nichols as his offense coordinator, Jim Patterson. You just had a tremendous amount of good coaches, and they were coaching because they loved the kids and they loved to coach. Mm-hmm. I think nowadays you got a different breed. First of all, you can't find coaches to hire at the schools. You've got so many volunteer coaches. You've got, and I probably shouldn't say this, but we've gone the Little League route where we're hiring Little League coaches because they can recruit players to your school. And it's just a tremendous difference.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference.
I agree. Assistant coaches, they make all the difference. Come on, man. The assistant coaches spend all the time with the players. They're the one that teaches them the X and O's. They're the one that gets to know them. They're the one that's with them all the time. Your assistant coaches, Coach Ryan used to say it all the time. The only reason he was up there is because he's standing on the shoulders of giants. He had great assistant coaches, didn't hire yes men. I think that's thing. That I don't know. What was the toughest drill that coach ever did? He ever talk with Bull in the Ring? I know Todd Leonard likes to tell the story. He threw a couple interceptions and then he got thrown in the ring after that, and that'll straighten you up right quick. But yeah, I don't know. His lack of contact is that Is that an issue too, Coach Pollard? I mean, is the practices just weaker now?
Well, I couldn't answer that. I've not been to a practice in 4 or 5 years, but I'd like to tell a little story about Coach Madison. When we first went to Pensacola High School, I think it's my second year, his first. He was the offense coordinator. I was defense coordinator, and we had Victor Floyd, Tim Maxwell. We had some great talent. And Coach Madison, I didn't know from Adam. Me and Dave Brown, we coaching the defense. We go about the second ball game. We're in Milton, and Milton had a decent team, but we get beat 6-3. After the game, Dave and I, we're all over Coach Madison. We're not talking very nice to him. I had no idea who this guy was, because you look up, Victor Floyd carried the ball, I think, 4 times all night. Coach Madison told us he had to have 4 or 5 running backs to run. Well, we got beat because he was playing people really shouldn't have been playing. Right. From that point on, I think that's where Coach and I bonded. I don't know if anybody'd ever talked to him like that before or whatever, but I think after that we became best friends. He really, really led me, I think, in the right direction. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Yeah, you stood up to him. I mean, Coach Bryant did not want yes men around him. Matter of fact, his favorite player, Pat Trammell, was the only one that would stand up to Coach Bryant. Yes, the only player I've ever seen that would. And he respected Pat. He loved Pat. I mean, I had a favorite player. Trace Penton was my all-time favorite player. If coaches tell you they don't have a favorite player, they're lying. So we all had favorite players. Come on, your wife, your girlfriend is your favorite woman, for crying out loud. We all had favorite players. Keith, sure. Who did Coach Madison really respect on your team, and who did you think that he had respect for as a player?
On the 1980 team, there would be no doubt. There were several guys on that team he had great respect for, and it wasn't necessarily because of what type of football player they were. Mm-hmm. It was what type of individual they were. Rocky,
yeah.
Not only was he a really good athlete, incredibly smart,
yeah,
and a Christian.
Yep.
And then John Langston on our defensive side of the football had great respect for him. Now, some of my friends, probably Jerry included, I don't know whether he respected me, but they would probably tell you he really liked me. Mm-hmm. And probably treated me a little different at times. Mm-hmm. There was reasons for that. I will tell you about a practice. You do need to hear about a practice.
Okay.
Earlier on, I told you about losing the first game of 1980. Well, Coach Madison had actually been absent from school and from practice on Monday and Tuesday, came to practice on Wednesday, and actually had to lay down. He had a bad episode of kidney stones.
Oh.
Well, he does come to the game. He's a little bit out of sorts. And we had a couple of penalties close to the goal line, and ended up getting beat in what was a really close game and a good football team in Choctawhatchee High School. Well, he told us, you be here Monday and you be ready to go, because after Monday, we're going to find out who wants to be a member of this football team. And you were talking about different drills. Well, you did every drill known to football, and you did it on hour. And the old practice football field out at Tate, Coach Tripp, you know where it was at. But back then there were shrubs on one side and a pecan grove on the other. We had started out, after that Friday night loss, we probably had 60, 61 kids that were on that football team. By the time we left, and when I say that night, I literally mean that night, we were down to about 40. I think we ended up with 43 guys. You can look at the pictures they took and put in the program.
Oh, my gosh.
And there were a lot of kids that had left, quit the team, even went to a couple of other schools, so it didn't even happen back then. But I truly believe that practice made a difference. Clint knows exactly what I'm talking about. He kind of lives in lore. I mean, it's in the history of Tate High School and what could happen and what did. In fact, one of the young men I mentioned earlier, Joey Kite, passed out. A group of us took him into the shower. Another father ended up having to take him to the hospital. He was dehydrated and could have passed away. But I tell you, I never wanted to go through that again. I didn't want to go through it that day.
Those are gut checks. That's what
it did not ever happen again in that particular year.
Oh, Coach,
that didn't just happen at Tate. Now, Coach Pollard can tell you those.
No.
Time for us. And some of the best scrimmages and skill drills that I ever saw were our team versus our team. I mean, our defense, one time there at Pine Forest, we took our defense, and I think we did this during the playoffs, Jerry. We took the defense and put them on offense, and took the offense and put them on defense, and we were better than anybody we ever played. Didn't we do that one day?
Yeah.
Okay. Paul, Mark,
Yes, sir.
Jerry, I got to go. I so apologize. Coach Madison, if you want to talk about poise, you want to talk about hustle, mental, physical toughness, and consistency, all the young men that are here, or old men that are on this episode today, they learned that from William Carl Madison, without a doubt. I apologize that I've got to get off. Y'all have a great day. And Paul, Mark, thank you for doing this tribute to Coach Madison.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Yeah, thanks, Coach. We appreciate your stories. Peace. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Take care.
Wow. Yeah, that's the old adage, Coach. You have to go through gut checks. Coach Bryant was a huge believer in it. Saban is. I remember gut checks at Bama, man, where it was the survival of the fittest, man. You would, and that's what happens. You get those core guys that stuck with each other during hard, difficult, almost gut-wrenching times. Those are the guys that your core. Coach Bryant used to say, I want to see if he's going to quit in practice before I put him in the game.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, my God. So that's exactly the same philosophy Coach Madison had. And Coach Pollard, that you took it with you when you were coaching, and that's why you were really successful. I think his coaching tree is pretty amazing. Coach Pollard, who are some of the coaches that were successful from him, from Ronnie Douglas to you to Coach Leonard? I mean, just could you name him more? I don't know as many.
Mike Bennett.
Mike Bennett.
Yes.
Mike McMillian, the coach for Coach Madison, he ended up having a successful career at Milton. I really don't know who else right off the top of my head. Jimmy Nichols, they coached for Coach Madison.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Jimmy Ray Stevens?
Yeah.
Jimmy Ray was from a different area.
Oh.
Yeah.
Steve Campbell played for
Campbell. Yeah, Clint.
Won a D2 national championship in college.
Yep.
Junior college national championships. Just a great career. Someone who loved Coach Madison.
Well, Clint, when you were researching the book, did you hear these stories over and over and over again? Which ones did you decide to put in the book?
Yeah, and there was just the common theme of everyone. That practice Keith just mentioned. I mean, I heard that from people of different decades. Scotty Madison talked about how tough they were, of course, but that one is the one that stuck out to me. And I interviewed, before he passed away a few years ago, Frank Colburn Sr., Rocky's dad, He was at practice every day for 11 years, probably at Tate. He said that was the most brutal one he ever witnessed.
Oh my gosh, Rocky's dad used to go to practice all the time.
Yeah,
so did my dad when I was in high school, though, Larry.
He worked at Tate. Yeah, he was on staff at Tate, so he came. He would come out and watch. But yeah, I mean the other stories I love. Of course, we don't have anyone here today, but his final stop at Jackson Academy, just how, and you mentioned that they were winless before he got there and turned around and won a state championship, but just what he did to build up the pride in the program that had no pride, and getting people involved in it from all different areas of the school and the community. Just what a complete turnaround that was. And at his funeral earlier this week, it was amazing to see all the different players from all the different schools who showed up. But what had dawned on me later is that I counted 7 of his former quarterbacks there.
Wow.
And I'm sure I missed 1 or 2, but it was just a special relationship between Coach Madison and quarterbacks. And it's great that Keith was able to be on the call, because he was certainly one of them, and the winning quarterback on his first state championship team. But those guys just worshiped Carl Madison.
I was hoping Scotty Madison would come on. Our condolences go out to Mark and Sky Madison. And the coach was something else. He was offensive minded more. Coach Pollard, do you remember Coach Madison talking about some of his favorite coaches that he liked and learned from? I know he was friends with Pat Dye and Coach Bryant.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I never heard him talk about too many far as picking up stuff, but we would go to coaching clinics, and he would go listen to the defensive staffs.
Ooh.
His theory was he knew everything he needed to know about offense, and he wanted to know how people are going to try to stop him.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of learned that from him. I would go listen to offensive people, kind of keep up on what they're trying to do, and he'd go listen to the defensive people. But I learned that from him. I thought that was very interesting the first time that he did it.
Coach, I thought about that when I coach, and I didn't do it enough either. And it just dawned on me, because I'm not the brightest, sharpest tool in the shed. But that's a brilliant idea, man. I think the offense and defensive coaches need to get together more and talk about what they're seeing and what they like and what they don't like, what they wish other teams would not do against them, which they wish they would do against them. I don't think that goes on enough, communicating between offensive and defensive coaches. I think he was an offensive coach. It's funny. Did he have any favorite sayings or maxims or anything when he walked on the football field, Coach Pollard, that you can remember? Clint, did he have any favorite maxims or phrases that you can remember?
No. The one we all go ahead, Coach Pollard. The one we all talk about, the phrase we heard more than any other that any Coach Madison player would tell you was "run it again."
Wow.
Because we would run it. I mean, with 11 guys on the offense, unless all 11 of them did exactly what they were supposed to do, the way they were supposed to do it, when they were supposed to do it, it wasn't right. And you had to run it again until every single player was doing exactly what they were supposed to do. And if that meant one time, great, but often it meant 10 times.
Well, you know what he was doing, and a lot of coaches don't do that to this day, is they do something until you get it right. You do it until you can't get it wrong. Mm-hmm. There's a difference. Mm-hmm. And it's the amount of reps, right, Coach?
Yep.
There's muscle memory, right?
Yeah. Exactly. He do it till it was just a natural thing for them. When they heard the play, they didn't have to think, they didn't have to react. They knew exactly, and it didn't matter where the guy lined up. They knew who they were blocking. They knew what steps they were taking, and that's just trying to be perfect. And a lot of his offensive plays were perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much for joining the show. It was a great tribute show to Coach. He is one of a kind. He's going to be sorely missed, but his legacy lives on not only in his record, which was I believe 326, 129, and 7. His record does not really say it all. The impact that he had on hundreds, and like Billy Graham says, a coach will have more positive impact in 1 year on a kid than most people do in a lifetime. Well, think how many lifetimes Coach Madison has impacted.
By reaching people like Coach Pollard and Coach Nichols and Coach Bennett and those guys, and then they go out and
they spread his
They
word.
Spread it. Now you're looking at second and third
generations. Goes on and on.
Yes. So
that's how he lives. That's how he continues to live on.
And thank you, Mr. Crockett, for bringing this out about Coach Madison and most of all, Coach Pollard. Thank you for what you've done for those kids out around the Northwest Florida area.
Yeah. Okay? Thanks, Coach. Thanks for what you did, Coach Pollard.
From Shantytown to Wedgwood to thank you, Coach.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, buddy. Thanks, Clint.
Appreciate it.
You. Thank you for the book, sir.
Yeah, thanks for the book. Can't wait to read it. Talk to y'all soon. So long.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Wow. What a show, Hobbs. Huh?
Man, that's got to be one of my favorites. Dave.
Man, he was one of a kind, boy. Let me tell you, Coach Madison. If you guys like this podcast, like and share it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go to Paul Tripoli Coach's Corner and subscribe. It's free. It's for me. Without these great sponsors, Hill Kelly Dodge, gosh, man, Siler Agency, Step One Auto, Ronnie's Car Wash, Pensacola Glass, Barnes, Beck, Barnes Heating Air, Arbitrium, Badlands, State Farm, all those. This just wouldn't be possible with any of them. We want to thank all of them. Stay tuned for these messages as we'll talk to you soon. Have a great sports weekend, everybody.
All right.
We're out.
Enjoy the tournament.
There's a reason why Hill Kelly in Pensacola is the #1 selling Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram dealer between Jacksonville and New Orleans. While other dealers have taken advantage of a competitive market with higher prices, Hill Kelly has discounted prices to the lowest of the year. And Hill Kelly in Pensacola won't surprise you with excessive charges beyond the selling price. Come see why people from Milton, Pace, Foley, Bay Minette, Daphne, Gulf Shores, Mobile, and beyond are driving to Hill Kelly in Pensacola to buy their next new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram. At Hill Kelly, the bottom line price and your satisfaction are what really matter. So before you sign, check the bottom line and make the trip to Hill Kelly in Pensacola to see what true local ownership can do for you. At Hill Kelly Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Highway 29 in Car City, Pensacola. Or shop online 24/7 at hillkellydodge.com. When it comes to bottom line pricing, nobody beats a Hill Kelly deal. Nobody.
So hard to get you in the perfect car. Looking for a better car buying experience? With the Step One Advantage from Buick GMC, Fort Walton Beach, and Pensacola, receive no-hassle market-based pricing or incentives by pre-ordering. Looking to sell or trade? Our dedicated team will even come to you. Plus, every vehicle sold at Step One supports local charities right in your neighborhood. Experience the Step One Advantage at Buick GMC, Fort Walton Beach, and Pensacola today.
Hey, Bill, some game, huh?
I haven't really noticed, Paul.
What? The biggest game of the year?
I've been looking over my insurance. Talk about problems I'm trying to figure out.
Well, do what I did. Call the Siler Agency. They showed me what I needed and what I didn't. They even saved me money. Now, instead of worrying about my insurance, I can worry about the big game.
Contact the Siler Agency at 476-7443 for all of your insurance needs. Your independent agent for home, auto, boat, RV, commercial, general liability, life, and sound investment strategies. Call 476-7443 today.
Are you riding around in a filthy vehicle? Dirty car no more. Visit Ronnie's Car Wash today to get it shining in no time. They have 3 convenient locations with another coming soon. The unlimited monthly wash packages start as low as $14.95 per month with free vacuums, multi-purpose spray, and towels. Visit them in Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, and soon Crestview. Don't wait, wash today. Be sure to see Ronnie's Car Wash on Facebook to see the latest specials and discounts. You'll be riding and shining in no time.
75 years of service and high tech today. It's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348. High tech is a term often applied to advanced services and products in today's marketplace. And today, glass is much more than a simple pane of brittle, see-through stuff we hit baseballs through when we were kids. Glass is now a product with unique flexibility in both performance and application. And Pensacola Glass Company is growing right along. That's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348.
Barnes Heating and Air is a proud sponsor of Alabama football, serving the entire Pensacola community for over 50 years. Barnes Heating and Air is passionate about providing customers with world-class air conditioning and heating repairs, sales, and installation. Barnes Heating and Air is family-owned, insured, and committed to quality. For a free estimate, call 478-0141. Barnes Heating and Air is #1 in customer service with service calls 7 days a week. Call Barnes Heating and Air 478-0141 and roll Tide.